Ever pondered over the peculiar connection between prosperity and spirituality, my dear listeners? In this fascinating world we inhabit, there are concepts that seem to be at odds with each other. Wealth and spirituality, for instance, often appear as two ends of a vast spectrum. On one hand, we have the materialistic allure of wealth, with its shiny cars and sumptuous mansions. On the other, we have spirituality, a journey inward, away from materialistic pursuits and towards self-realization and inner peace. But here's a thought to tickle your intellect. What if these two aren't as contradictory as they seem? What if, like two sides of the same coin, wealth and spirituality can coexist? What if they could even be interconnected? An intriguing thought, isn't it? So buckle up, for we are about to embark on a hilarious journey of a character who mastered this connection. Now brace yourselves as we embark on a hilarious journey of a character who mastered this connection. Introducing our hero, or rather the anti-hero, Penniless Pete, who had a knack for being perpetually broke. Now, Penniless Pete was a bit of an oddity. He was as charming as a summer's day, but as unfortunate as a fox in a henhouse. His life was a symphony of mishaps and misfortunes, always dancing on the edge of disaster, yet he carried on with an infectious optimism. Pete was born into a family with more love than money, which was a sweet sentiment until the bills arrived. From a young age, he learned that money was a slippery eel, always just out of his grasp. His pockets were like a sieve, and coins would disappear as quickly as they appeared. But our Pete was not one to be defeated. His life became a series of get-rich-quick schemes, each more ludicrous than the last. There was the time he tried to sell ice to Eskimos, or the incident with the ostrich farm. The less said about that, the better. And who could forget the fiasco with the inflatable dartboards? Pete was a walking paradox, a man with a Midas touch that turned everything to dust. But the remarkable thing about Pete was his spirit. Despite his constant financial drought, he was rich in spirit. His laughter was infectious, his optimism unyielding. He was a man who could find joy in a raindrop, wonder in a blade of grass. His story is one of perseverance in the face of adversity, of finding joy in the journey, not just the destination. Pete was a man who understood that wealth wasn't just about the size of your bank balance, but the richness of your spirit and the wealth of your character. So, as Pete trudged through life, penniless as ever, he remained cheerful, always looking for the silver lining, always ready for the next big thing. And little did he know, his next big thing was just around the corner. Penniless Pete was about to stumble upon a spiritual revelation that would turn his life around. One fine day, Pete found himself at a spiritual retreat, not for enlightenment, mind you, but because they were offering free food. Now imagine our dear Penniless Pete, with a belly full of lentil soup, sitting cross-legged and trying to decipher the spiritual teachings being shared. You see, Pete wasn't really the spiritual type, more of a show-me-the-money type, really. There he was, mistaking the concept of inner peace for inner piece of pie. Or when the guru spoke about detachment, Pete wondered if it was about detaching the bills from his life. But as the days passed by and the lentil soup kept flowing, something started to shift in Pete. His ears perked up when he heard the guru say, "Manifesting abundance is not about accumulating material wealth, but about realizing the abundance within." Pete thought to himself, "Abundance within, I've got plenty of that. I'm full of lentil soup." But it wasn't about the lentil soup, was it? Slowly and surely, Pete started to understand. He realized that the abundance the guru spoke of was not about having a stuffed wallet, but a fulfilled heart. It was about acknowledging the richness of experiences, relationships, and inner growth. It was about recognizing the wealth in being content and at peace with oneself. One day, Pete found himself sitting by the river, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. And in that moment, he felt a sense of peace, a sense of abundance he had never experienced before. Not when he was chasing money, not when he was fretting over bills. Pete started to see wealth in a new light. He began to understand that wealth wasn't just about accumulating money. It was about having an abundance of happiness, peace, and love in your life. It was about realizing that he was rich, not in terms of money, but in terms of life's experiences and relationships. And so Pete began his spiritual journey, not out of a quest for inner peace, but with a hope to manifest wealth. Scene script. Pete started practicing spirituality with an ulterior motive, but it led him to some surprising revelations about wealth. Imagine this. Pete, our unlikely hero, sitting cross-legged on a worn-out rug, bathed in the morning sunlight streaming through a cracked window pane. He had read somewhere that the early morning was the best time for spiritual practices, so there he was trying to quiet his thoughts and focus on, well, money. With a twinkle in his eye, he decided to start his spiritual journey with a funny experiment. He began chanting, "Show me the money," under his breath. Each morning, he'd wake up before the break of dawn, sit on his old rug, and repeat this mantra with the fervour of a man on a mission. However, weeks passed and Pete's bank balance remained as barren as before. No mysterious checks arrived in his mailbox. No long-lost relatives left him a fortune. Nada, zip, zilch. Undeterred, Pete decided to change his approach. He swapped his "show me the money" mantra for a more spiritual one. I am abundance. He repeated this new mantra each day, feeling a little silly but hopeful. Yet despite his best efforts, the universe seemed to have missed his memo. His pockets still jingled with the sound of emptiness. One evening, as Pete sat on his rug, sulking about his failures, he had an epiphany. He realized that his focus had been on the lack of wealth, not the presence of it. He had been so consumed with what he didn't have that he failed to acknowledge what he did have. With this newfound wisdom, Pete decided to try a new experiment. He began expressing gratitude for the wealth he already possessed, his health, his intelligence, his creativity, and even his old rug. Instead of pleading with the universe for money, he started thanking it for his abundance. And something magical happened. The universe started responding. Opportunities began to present themselves, a job offer here, a freelance gig there. It was as if the universe had been waiting for Pete to shift his perspective all along. Pete's journey was not an overnight success. It was a series of trials and errors, of failures and lessons learned. But with each step, he grew more in tune with the spiritual approach to wealth. He realized that wealth was not just about money. It was about abundance in all its forms: health, happiness, relationships, and experiences. And so, the man who started his spiritual journey with an ulterior motive found himself on a path of true abundance. His bank balance started to grow, yes, but more importantly, he found wealth in areas of his life he had previously overlooked. And lo and behold, penniless Pete was no longer penniless. So, what's the punchline of this hilariously enlightening saga of Pete, you ask? Well, let's break it down, shall we? Firstly, we met our unlikely hero, penniless Pete, who was so broke he couldn't afford to pay attention. But as we've seen, he didn't let this define him. Pete, despite his empty pockets, was rich in spirit. He was the embodiment of the phrase, "You cannot judge a book by its cover," or in Pete's case, a man by his wallet. We then embarked on a spiritual epiphany with Pete. This wasn't a sudden lightning bolt of revelation, oh no. It was a gradual awakening, a gentle unfurling of understanding that wealth isn't just about the coins in your pocket or the numbers in your bank account. It was about a sense of abundance, a feeling of prosperity that came from within. This led us to the spiritual approach to wealth. Pete realized that his wealth was not defined by material possessions. Instead, it was about his inner state, his attitude towards life. He discovered that by aligning his values with his actions, by living authentically and with purpose, he could manifest prosperity in his life. And now we've arrived at the punchline. Pete's journey from penniless to prosperous was not about a sudden windfall or a lucky break. It was about a fundamental shift in perspective. It was about understanding that wealth is not just about money, but about a sense of fulfillment, of contentment, of peace. In essence, Pete's journey was a testament to the idea that wealth is a state of mind. It's about finding balance, living authentically, and aligning your actions with your values. It's about understanding that prosperity comes from within and manifests externally. Remember, folks, prosperity isn't just about amassing wealth. It's about manifesting it through a balanced spiritual approach. And if penniless Pete can do it, so can you. So, let's all take a leaf out of Pete's book and start manifesting our prosperity, shall we?